Good morning, everyone. Today is March 28th of 2020, and this is the John Chappell Natural Philosophy Science Chat. Okay, let's see who we have here this morning. Today we have Bill. Morning, Bill. Haven't seen you in a little while.
Yes, I've been away.
Yeah, more people are joining the science chat because there just really isn't anything else to do now, right? They've shut everything down. And we've got Carl and we've got Ian this morning. How you guys all doing?
Fine.
Hopefully everyone's staying healthy. We're trying to. So I was wondering, did anyone got any topics they'd like to talk about this morning? Anything in particular? Let's see here. We've just got Kurt come on here as well. And on Facebook, looks like we've got Roger Anderton with us as well. So once again, this is kind of your chat. If you've got anything on your mind, see what's going on. So we haven't heard from you, Bill, in a little while. What's going on in your world?
I was going to say on this coronavirus. Actually, I got two sessions here. I got to end one of them.
Yeah, Bill, do you have any magical scientific cures that the mainstream has suppressed for coronavirus?
Yes, there are some. One is for over 100 years, we have been able to stop viruses using an ultraviolet light. And normally the ultraviolet lights are pretty big, like a desktop lamp or something like that. But they now have one that will fit in your pocket that's battery operated. And you can get, and that's being advertised on the internet. So that's one option you have that will do that. The other one is a man named Anton Prior discovered how to use longitudinal light to enhance the body's immune system to get rid of things like virus and most diseases. And the medical community hated his work so much, they killed him and everyone who's ever associated with his medical practice in Europe and France, because it would have been the end of the pharmaceutical industry and most of the medical profession. He had devised a longitudinal light that could cure 93 diseases during his lifetime, and including cancer and many other very difficult diseases to work with. And the Chinese, his longitudinal light it took a 2-story building to hold it, and he had a gurney in there that he put animals on and people to cure them from their diseases. And the Chinese have managed to reduce the size of that longitudinal light to something close to a flashlight. And they would like to sell 5 billion of them, one to every family on Earth, and they would be able to cure most of the diseases known with no medications, no doctor required. All you have to do is turn your light on and set it for the frequency for the disease that you have. And every country is trying to stop the Chinese from ever being able to export it to their country. But so we'll see what is going to happen there. So it's just interesting to see. I've been involved with longitudinal radiation, and we even had a person out west in this country named Hulda Clark, who read about the work that Anton Prior did in France, and she went to Radio Shack for about $100, bought enough stuff to make a device that did longitudinal radiation currents in a wire. And she made a plus and a minus piece, and you put that on your body close to wherever the disease was that you were trying to cure, and then you turn it on, set the frequency for that disease, and it worked so well that she was helping tens of thousands of people overcome diseases, even including cancer. And she was so well appreciated out west that in the town where she lived, the people paid for, not paid her, but paid for a medical building for her to do her practice in. And when the Food and Drug Administration heard about that, they went and took her to court to have her license to practice medicine taken away, because none of those therapies that she was doing were registered with the Food and Drug Administration. And she was curing the same 93 diseases that Anton Prior was curing. And it was $4 million registration fee for each one. So they wanted quite a lot of money from her, and she didn't have that kind of money. She was curing people. They just had to pay for the office visit, and she would put this device on them and cure them, and then it would go home. And but she never put on the medical insurance anything other than the office visit. She didn't put down any particular procedure she was doing. She gave that to them for free. And anyway, when they had the court trial, over 10,000 of her former patients showed up at the courthouse on the day of the trial to say that they had gotten well with no side effects using longitudinal current, electric current. And the Food and Drug Administration told the court they didn't want to see any of that evidence. They didn't care about the health of Americans. They only cared about enforcing their rules, which supported the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry and the agricultural industry. And so they didn't get to say anything in the court about how effective her therapy was, and her license to practice medicine was taken away. But the country of Canada sent her an invitation to come and said they would welcome her, and they would give her a license to practice medicine in Canada. And so she went to Canada. But you see what things are like in the medical field. It's, as people say, it's all about the money. Follow the money and you'll find out what's going on. And so that seems to be a lot of what is happening. And by the way, all these things I'm mentioning to you, they're on the internet. They've been there for many years. And the work that Anton Prior did was in the 50s and 60s and the early 70s. And then she was after that time. And,
Can we find this longitudinal flashlight on the internet? You think?
I don't know. If I haven't seen that, I've only seen articles about it, but I haven't seen a picture of it. But yeah, you might be able to do a longitudinal light. And by the way, this information was put in the Star Wars movies and Star Trek movies. You know, those were science fiction movies, and the idea of the science fiction movie was to take current developments in science and to project what would be available in the future. And if you watch those movies, you've seen that they had something called a communicator. And now we all have one of those. We don't call it a communicator. We call it a cell phone. There wasn't any such thing when they made the movie. And the other thing they had in that was called a tricorder. And the tricorder was a longitudinal light flashlight. And they just radiated the sick person in the movie and they would get well with that. And that was based on the work of Anton Prior. But his device was a 2-story building. That the device was built into the walls and the ceiling and floors and everything. And
okay, I think Alistair wanted to comment on something.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's see, Alistair, you need to unmute.
Yeah. Because I think I have some understanding about what Bill is trying to talk about. It Have you guys seen a picture of a coronavirus or the SARS virus or one of the other viruses? They're basically spherical, and then they got stalks sticking out. The math of the sphere that they're composed of is actually an icosahedron. It's not actually, they're not actually spherical. They have a icosahedral property to them. So what happens is they have a resonant harmonic frequency, and if you can find it and expose them to it, you can cause them to disintegrate, shatter. Imagine it like this. Think of them like a spherical table that has a bunch of wine glasses sitting on it, and you know how to shake the table violently. So you send the right frequency to shake the table. The wine glasses sitting on the table are connected to it, but they have a different frequency because of their length, their short length. So you shake the table, the wine glasses bust. This is a known thing, and it's not like hocus pocus. We use antiviral lights. You see them in restaurants hanging on walls over the cashier area and stuff. We have those lights. They work at killing the virus if the virus is exposed directly, but when the virus is inside of a person, we can't get to it as easily without potentially causing them any issue, because the process is basically the same. Oh, sorry, my little flap there. The process is basically the same as microwaving the person. You're putting them in between two magnets that are going to go off phase and cause a field at a specific frequency and energize the anything that resonates at that frequency. So the same way that microwaves heat up water, the treatment for the virus heats up the virus inside of you. That's taking it to the next step, which is trying to cure the problem rather than treat the environment around you with the light. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we know we have the ability to irradiate viruses on the surface, but that's not the same as treating people who are infected, because you can't get light inside of people all that easily without heating them up and killing them.
Yeah, here's that reference that you have here. So they're basically suggesting that if you had a low power density microwave, that you could basically disinfect the area, the whole area there, to help reduce the spread of these kind of viruses. I had also heard that these viruses are sensitive to microwaves. So yesterday I received a package from my sister, and so I just stuck it in the microwave for about 10 seconds and saying, okay, if there was anything on that package, that would have killed it, I think, hopefully.
So, I wanted to jump in with that because I hear what Bill is saying, and it has some aspects of plausibility, even though overall it kind of sounds a little, out there. Actually, there's reason to buy into it, and we do actually have the UV lights that kill germs, and we use them, but they're killing germs on the surface, on money and on objects.
Well, the whole longitudinal thing was discovered with the use of radar, and of course we know radars generate microwaves. So I'm thinking that what they're calling longitudinal wave is probably a microwave. Maybe a low, once again, like a low valued microwave field that might, kill the local viruses and things, but not enough to hurt people, I guess.
But the sometimes how stories can grow a little over time. So we know that, like, in petri dishes and on the surface, we can kill these viruses. We don't know about being able to treat. So when I hear a story about how somebody has been curing stuff and it gets suppressed, I have some skepticism about the validity of all of that story. Some parts I find plausible, other parts I'd have to see about, like, news stories about this person getting shut down and blah blah and stuff like that, because you got to figure, if somebody is actually curing people, you're not going to manage to suppress that. It would be miraculous and people would be lining up. It would be a viral sensation overnight. So I have to be somewhat skeptical about not the process, because I'm saying, yes, the process is conceptually correct, but there are limitations to its application, and therefore I'm skeptical about the curing of all these diseases. Though I do see the possibility exists, I don't think it was successful to that degree, but I don't know. So I'm agreeing
we don't know
that there is something to the stories,
Well,
but I'm wondering if they're as true as being said.
you can check this one out for Anton Prior, because the fellow that a person that one of the first humans that he cured was the wife of the president of France. So and he, because he was the president, he had all of the finest medical people in the country of France working on his wife. She had cancer and she was dying from it, and she'd had chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radical surgery, all the standard techniques for cancer, and it wasn't helping her. And he went to see Anton Prior, whom he had known during World War II, and said, "Would you radiate my wife? I've tried everything, and I would like to. I understand you have cured animals of cancer, and I'd like to have you radiate my wife." And he said, "Well, I haven't done people, so I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work." But he said, "I don't have a license to do people. I only have a license to do animals." And the president said, "Oh, I'll bring you a license to do people tomorrow, and I'll bring my wife, and you can radiate her." And so he did. And Anton Prior radiated his wife with his big 2-story building device. And then within a few weeks, she appeared to be cancer-free. Now, the people who were testing her were the best known names in medicine. They were head of medical schools. They were head of medical societies. They had examined his wife before she had this radiation therapy with the longitudinal radiation, and after she had it, and it was gone. And the president of France called a news conference for the 29 nations in the EU and had all the major newspapers and magazines cover the recovery of his wife from cancer. And he announced that because of the success of this treatment, that he was having the French government give this doctor a multi-million-dollar grant to start doing people, because he said people are more important than animals. And he was just doing animals up to that time. But he was very successful with animals. There were no side effects to his longitudinal radiation, and it had a very high success rate. So anyway, that is all on the internet, and you can see that. And you can see the heads of the various medical societies giving their testimony as to how this was successful, and they were
Right.
all shocked.
Ian,
Well,
why don't you take a shot at it?
Yeah, could I, Franklin? Thank you. Just to mention, in the last few days, my attention was drawn to something else. I've actually put up a link on the chat there, but it's not about longitudinal radiation or UV or anything like that. But it has the same basis, sort of conspiratorial basis that perhaps Bill has mentioned. Let me just see now. This gentleman, Dr. Matthias Rath, R-A-T-H. He has the Dr. Rath Health Foundation. Can't read my own writing. Yeah, that's it there. Basically, in a nutshell, he claims there's a big conspiracy with the pharmaceutical industry and the politicians, and the pharmaceutical industry is controlling the medical profession, which is controlling the politicians, and so on and so forth. And he's claiming that they are keeping away from the public the basic cure, because they want to bring in these antiviral drugs and ultimately a vaccination and make so much money from it. From looking at these things fairly quickly over the last couple of days, I think his basis is that it's a vitamin. It's vitamin C. This seems to be the wonder element. For example, animals seem to be immune largely to this virus, and he says that this is because they synthesize vitamin C in their saliva, and all we would need to do is do that. And he gives some background information about that, and how that was suppressed in favor of things like chemotherapy, which he dismisses as merely killing one cancer and giving you another. That's the way he deals with the sort of side effect issue. Now he goes into quite detail. I wrote to my friend back. I said, this is going a bit further than I go. I do tend to think there's a bit of a conspiracy, even though it may be largely unconscious, but he's claiming there's sort of a conscious conspiracy. And he's basically claiming also that wars like the Second World War was caused by the pharmaceutical industry, largely in Germany, who were actually prosecuted in Nuremberg as well. He has some links to that, but he said that they were interested in producing all these drugs and so on. And he said what's happening now is quite similar.
All right, just scrolling through the article here. So vitamin C. Yeah, I bought myself a bottle of vitamin C. I was going through the aisles and saw that the vitamin C was completely sold out. And then I asked one of the sales people who was restocking, you got, all the vitamin C. And they handed me this bottle. And it's like later I found out, yeah, that was a $17 bottle of vitamin C, not the $6 one I was intending to get. But
because my attention was drawn to something else in another country, I think, which it said the medics would just like to make very clear, and the government support them, that vitamin C is not the panacea at all. Don't believe that stuff that you hear on the internet. So it seemed that they went overboard to try to deny that this had any efficacy, which sort of would maybe raise the hackles a little.
Yeah, I think we got some other comments along those lines here. We have some other, let's see here. Yeah, like Musser. He's been talking about vitamin C. And also zinc. I didn't know you could get zinc from pumpkin seeds. And zinc stops DNA replication on the spot. And David is saying that diets can reverse major chronic diseases. I remembered Bill talking about, the use of fruits and vegetables and how they had been effectively banned by the FDA for treating anything. But I think they did actually get that reversed at least, right? And they then have the chloroquine and ionophore.
Franklin,
No,
that wasn't reversed. but what happened was 17 states passed a state law legalizing the eating of fresh fruits and vegetables for any medical purpose. And that included New York, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Texas, California, but only 13 states. And so if you go to a different state, like my wife, when she was treated at Georgetown University Hospital for cancer, and she got well by going up to Amish country in Pennsylvania and to a place called the Retreat House, and they trained her on how to eat fresh fruits and vegetables for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they trained her for 7 days to do a different breakfast on each day, a different lunch, a different supper, and then told her to go home and continue doing that, and her cancer would go away. And sure enough, within 30 days, it was gone. And when she went to Georgetown University Hospital, they said, we can't find any sign of your cancer. And they said, is there something wrong with our paperwork, or did we make a mistake or something? And she said, no, I had cancer, but I went up to this place in Pennsylvania and learned how to use fresh fruits and vegetables to cure it. And they said, that's illegal. That's against the law. We have to report you to the Food and Drug Administration because that's not a registered therapy. And they said, because you have used a non-registered therapy, which is illegal, we are not allowed to provide any more medical services to you in this hospital. And if you come even in an ambulance to the emergency room, we will reject you because you have used an illegal therapy. And furthermore, if you go to any doctor in the United States, all 50 states, for anything related to cancer, that doctor will lose his license to practice medicine because he cooperated with a patient who is using non-registered protocol of fresh fruits and vegetables. And 6 months later, we did go to Virginia, another state. We lived in Maryland and gone into DC. The hospital in DC was considered the leading hospital for cancer east of Mississippi at that time. And that was 50 years ago. Anyway, we went to a hospital in Leesburg, Virginia, and had a test to see if my wife, the cancer had returned. They have a way of doing it chemically. And they found that it had not. But that information that he had done that test was reported on our medical insurance, and our medical insurance was being monitored because we were reported by the doctors at Georgetown University Hospital. And so when they saw that, they immediately took that doctor the next day to court and had his license to practice medicine revoked. And the doctor was shocked. He was fairly well off. And so he appealed it to the Virginia Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court and lost on both cases. It made the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Evening Star in Washington, D.C., and many other newspapers in the country. There was a flurry of activity to reduce the power of the Food and Drug Administration so it couldn't take the license of a medical doctor away because he saw a patient who was using fresh fruits and vegetables as a therapy for a disease. And but the pharmaceutical industry and the American Medical Association, and they sent their people to see each of the members of Congress and said, if you vote to reduce the power of Food and Drug Administration, we will no longer support your campaigns, and we contribute more money to your campaigns than anybody else. So you'll take a risk if you try to do this. So they decided not to do it. And that's what caused these states to pass a state law legalizing the eating of fresh fruits and vegetables. And you see that type of process going on all the time. And we talk about draining the swamp in Washington, D.C., but there's an awful lot going on, not just in the medical field, but in other fields too. And there are people who are profiting off of it. The members of Congress are profiting off of it, and many other people. And so they don't want to give up their source of income and that sort of thing.
let's see, I had gotten an email from Dennis, and it suggests that there is some kind of Chinese medicine. So let me see if I can hear that right here. So that's this article here says the nearly extract scrub may be our best hope against coronavirus. An East Asian plant known as Erlium chinensis, the staple of Chinese medicine for centuries. So this is like the more commonly known herbal supplement is like echinacea. So what's special about this one here?
It has very strong antiviral properties. Ever since I've been taking it for quite some time, I don't get my usual colds and flu.
Yeah, you've been taking that. So where do you get that? Is that commonly available at GNC or?
Well, a lot of it is out of stock, but there's one by Planetary Herbals. And it's Butyrium, or however you pronounce it, liver cleanse. It detoxifies your liver. I have to take that because I take a drug that is for my mental health, so that but that drug is very hard on my liver. So I take this Planetary Herbal liver cleanse, which isn't expensive. It's like $15 a bottle, if you know where to, And I don't have problems that they said I probably would have with my liver and my whole health. Your liver is very important.
Let's see, we got some other comments from people watching us in the live stream. Thanks you all for watching here. So David says that he's reversed a lot of his problems with the diet, and Ed says that big pharma is a big problem, and Stefan asked if we can post some patents on longitudinal radiation so it can replicate the devices. I think on the internet they have like a circuit you could replicate, I think, but not the full device. Not much you know of anything, Bill, that describes how to build these things.
The apparatus that Hulda Clark invented can be purchased on the internet, and it's made in Canada. They have improved what she did. I think she's passed away now, but they have improved what she did. They made it so that it would automatically go through all 93 diseases that when you turned it on and put it on yourself. And that way, even if you don't know what it was you had, if it was one of the 93 diseases it would cure, you would be cured. And do
you know what the device is called? Can we search for it on the internet today?
I'd have to do some research. I actually have one in my house, and I've tried it out, but I haven't had anything that I needed to be cured of, so I wasn't sure from that if it works or not. But
you said it was a longitudinal current thing, right?
Yes, longitudinal current. And by the way, there was another famous doctor that was practicing with the fella in Europe that was working on emotional problems, that sort of thing. I can't think of his name, but he was practicing with him, and he was using an electrical device, and he didn't care for that, so he asked him to leave, and he came to America, and he came to Boston, and he did a lot of work up in the Boston area with longitudinal radiation, and he was working more with mental problems, but he did do some work on regular diseases. And,
Okay. Yeah, since the internet didn't really show anything. Let's see, we got another one here. So, they're going to use spectral frequencies to burst cancer cells.
Let me tell you how they claim this works with the longitudinal radiation and longitudinal current. The molecules in the cells of the body have a certain type of energy. If you look at an organic molecule, it looks like a spiral spring, and it oscillates along the length of the spiral spring, and that is considered the life energy. And I have a life energy meter, and you can buy this on the internet. Just look up experimental life energy meter, and you will see it, and you can find where it's for sale and that sort of thing. And so it can measure the life energy of anything that is alive by measuring the longitudinal radiation being emitted from it. And so you don't have to touch the item. It just uses the radiation coming off. You can take a plant leaf, and I've taken a plant leaf off of a plant that was alive, put it near the meter so the meter would read, and then just left it there and kept taking a reading every hour or so. And you can see the life energy drop as the plant starts to wilt and to dry out into a brown leaf. And the same thing is true of any living item. If it's bacteria, if it's an animal, a plant, or whatever, a fish, anything like that, you can measure the life energy of it and see how it decreases. And what happens when you radiate an animal or a sick animal or even a fruit or vegetable with this, it increases the life energy in the fruit or vegetable so that it doesn't decay. And so what Anton Prior saw when he was assigned to a radar unit during World War II is the bushel baskets of fruit and vegetables for his unit that were put at the base of the antenna did not go bad because there was a small amount of this longitudinal radiation coming off and causing the molecules in the fruits and vegetables to increase their life energy so that they didn't go bad. And so that was how that was first discovered. And it took him a while to figure out just what it was that was coming off of the radar antenna, because he was a medical student. He didn't know anything about antennas and types of radiation and everything, but he hired electrical engineers to investigate for him, and they told him that it was longitudinal radiation coming off of the antenna that was causing these fruits and vegetables not to. And one day he walked about 10 miles away from his radar unit to an artillery unit and was visiting there. And while he was visiting, talking to some friends, he happened to take a look at their bushel baskets of fruits and vegetables that they were using for food there. And he noticed it was going bad. And so he told them that, he said, you should get your fruits and vegetables to the same place we get ours, because ours doesn't go bad. And they said to him, don't you know, we both use the same source to get our fruits and vegetables from. There's only one supplier. And so that's not the case. And so then he realized it had something to do with that radar antenna. That's how he
it has something to do with radar or microwave, I'm thinking. I don't know whether did they rule out that it was microwaves and it was something different, or was it really microwaves?
It was longitudinal radiation. Longitudinal radiation.
Well, the thing is, scientifically, I just want to, as a skeptic, I would say that if you have seen some unusual activity around your radar dish, that it's probably due to microwaves. How it could have been, if you look at how microwaves were generated, it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't take very much to generate a microwave. If you look at your standard microwave, you've got like basically a gigantic transformer and a capacitor, and then the actual microwave too, which is actually this little resonance cavity thing. It really isn't that much for a microwave. So if there was longitudinal wave, it has to be coming out of one of those components. Certainly, there's a lot of electromagnetic things going on in a microwave, but its primary job is to generate microwaves. Right? So, my question being, is the longitudinal wave and the microwave the same thing?
No, they're not the same thing. The microwave will kill cells, whereas the longitudinal radiation enhances the energy, the life energy of the cells. So they
I don't know, because that's a matter of intensity, because we just saw this other article here suggesting that we can use low-level microwaves like disinfect things, much like we use UV lamps now to disinfect areas, I suppose. I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, but if you take that UV lamp and put it on fruits and vegetables, they'll go bad faster.
That may be true, but that may not be the origin. See, Musser has some other comments here about that they're saying that animals can create their own vitamin C naturally, and that's why they don't get as sick from flus. Although I'm not sure whether that's true or not. I always thought other animals could get colds and the like, and like we got the coronavirus from bats, so presumably they got sick from that. But they're saying that animals are able to produce their own vitamin C, and that we can't do it because of some mutation in the past. So you're saying that when you get sick, then vitamin C is raised about 100 grams in the body. And that would kind of indicate how much vitamin C you might need if we are in stress. And he also said that dogs will heal really quick. Once again, I don't know anything about dogs, so I can't really confirm or deny whether that actually happens.
Well, one thing is we have this experimental life energy meter, and it measures longitudinal radiation. Cells that are vibrating with this life energy, they radiate off over time, and that's why you have to keep eating food and stuff like that to replenish the longitudinal life energy meter and life energy. And we take this meter to farmers markets, and what we do at the farmers market is we'll take something like an apple from a particular brand or type, and we'll take the organically grown apple, and we'll take the inorganically grown apple, and we'll measure the life energy of both. And what we find is the organically grown life energy, apple life energy, is higher than the inorganically grown, same type of apple, but not, you've got all these chemicals and stuff like that on it, that so you can get a better yield, but it causes the life energy to go down. And then what we do at the farmers market is we then have the people who are there observing the presentation come up and have their life energy measured. They don't have to touch anything, just got to bring their hand up close to the meter and they'll get a reading. And then we compare that reading with what we got from the organically grown apple compared to the inorganically grown apple. And we see that their life energy is in between the two values. And so we ask the question, well, which is better for you, to eat food with lower life energy or to eat food with higher life energy? And the answer there they want everybody to realize is, well, you should eat the food that has the higher life energy, because that's your source of energy. When it goes through your digestive tract and everything, that longitudinal energy comes out and gets absorbed by the molecules of your body. But if you eat things with lower life energy, it causes the life energy of your body to drop and makes you more susceptible to disease. and things of that sort. So that's what we do at these farmer markets, and we've done that, believe it or not, in Washington State. Yeah, and Spokane, and so we also do it in Canada. But that's one of the demonstrations that's given, and also many hospitals in the emergency room use our experimental life energy meter because they have found that they can identify the people closest to death by the life energy they have. And it only takes a second or two to measure it when they come into the emergency room. And so they can tell what order they should treat the patients coming into the emergency room if they want to keep them alive. And so once I went to the, I was at Catholic University, and I had a problem with my wrist, and I went to the hospital and went to the emergency room, and I told them I was Dr. Charles Lucas. Of course, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a PhD. But at Catholic University, if you had a PhD, you just said you were Dr. So-and-so. And it didn't occur to me what would happen when I said that at the hospital. And but they took me first out of all the patients in the emergency room. And I realized after it was over, and I had a sprained wrist is what it was, but I didn't know what it was. I'd never had that problem before. It was sprained pretty bad. And but I realized after that day that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't say I'm Dr. So-and-so when I go to the emergency room, because that gives me priority over all the other patients there. And I wasn't in a life dangerous situation. I just wanted some help, figuring out what was wrong with me and that sort of thing. So I figured I should just say I'm Bill Lucas instead of Dr. Lucas.
Or next time I go to the hospital, I'm going to say I'm Dr. Franklin Who. And they'll put me in the line. Apparently, they don't ask for a lot of credentials.
Oh no, they didn't do that. But they give priority to people who they think should have priority. And if you're a nurse, you get priority over a regular patient. And so that's how they do things. But I don't do it that way anymore. When I go to the hospital, if I go for some reason, I just because I know some other people may die waiting for their turn, and I would be taken ahead of them, and I don't really have to have that soon a treatment or examination because I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
So Dennis sent another reference here, which is this. There's this company that makes a bunch of these kind of instruments that are based on electrical kind of things. Let me see if I can share that with you guys. And this is called soda.com. Hopefully this is the right thing, Dennis. If it's not, let me know. But this looks like they have something that can make silver for you. I think.
Well, they have to be extremely careful. They ship my equipment in 3 different packages. No, really, they shipped in 3 different packages, and so that and claiming that it was good for your plants. If you spray it on your plants, so it was also it was a combination of a current device that Bill was talking about, and also a silver generator, ionic silver, which is good for bacteria and viruses too. And I bought it because of the silver generator, not of the other thing that Bill mentioned. And I've never actually tried it. I suppose I will if I get this virus. I have to haul that out of my drawer again and use it. But this company here makes it, and they will ship to the United States, but they're very careful about how they do it.
Yeah, so where are these guys? They're in Canada, I think. Yeah, Canada.
Okay. If you want to, can I share my screen? I have a picture of this life energy meter so people can see it.
I think you can. I think you just have to, in the bottom of the screen, just share screen.
Let me see.
So you click on that, and then you have to click on another dialog that says after that, and then click OK.
Okay, let me see.
Although I think the life energy meter is readily available on eBay. And I think I now remember that I saw a circuit for how that works. And basically, it's like a capacitance meter kind of thing. It's just that it has like.
So the name of the company that makes it is Helionosis, HELIOENOSIS. And it's, if you just do a Google search on experimental life energy meter, you will see it. And I've got it on my screen.
Readily available on eBay.
Pardon?
I think that's readily available. Have you been able to share your screen yet?
I tried, but it isn't. It isn't.
It's a little bit
showing.
complicated. If you initially click on share screen, it shows you another dialog, like a picture of your screen. And you have to actually click on that screen and then click OK. You click on there, it says screen sharing, you have to press share screen, and then it says there's a thing that says in your entire screen. You have to actually click on your screen and then click on share. No, can't figure it out.
Amy, can you do that? Maybe you can just do experimental life energy. Do a Google on experimental life energy meter, and when you get a list of places, one will say Helionosis, and click on that one, and you'll see the device.
On eBay, let's see here. It sorts for everything here. Yeah, for example, here's an example of one here. So that's an example of one that this is like an ancient one. This is like a vintage one. But I'm sure it's the same thing.
Yeah,
it looks like that.
You're getting a picture of some of the earlier models. Yeah.
Yeah, the very early version here.
Yeah. Now,
looks
this
like
does
the
not
probe is connected to a vacuum tube there.
This does not require a wire or anything to touch the device you're measuring the life energy from, but you have a sensor that you have to make the radiation coming out of the living thing so that you can what it is, what you're measuring. And then here's a picture of the screen, and I have one of these at my house. And
yeah, this one's obviously a little bit busted up. So.
that one was,
You have newer ones here. Let me see here. No, I'm surprised I'm not seeing. The newer version.
If you go to the Helionosis website, they have videos showing how they measure things, and you can see all the different types of things they can measure with their one meter. And they have different plug-in devices that go on it that help you make various kinds of measurements. I think you're on eBay, but if you're on the Helionosis website, you'll see a lot better what it can do.
Helionosis manufacturer.
There it is. Yeah.
So there's their new one.
Yeah, that's a new one. That's one I have. And but they have in here there are videos too you can watch, and they'll show you how to measure all different kinds of things. Like if you want to measure bacteria life energy, if you want to measure a leaf or a person or the different parts of the human body, you can actually measure the life energy different parts of the body, and so you can see where life energy is the highest. And so that's a lot of very interesting the things that they have enabled people to do. And this has now been it's been available for about 30 or 40 years. So a lot of people have tested it and done all kinds of stuff, and they've gone through various, I guess you'd say, improvements to the meter over time.
Yeah, I think there's vacuum capacitor. That's one of the key elements of the meter here. So that's that. Okay, so see here. Let's go on to something else. I thought we'd take a look at what's going on in Google News. So the Google Physics News is a good source of the current headlines. So let's go over there and check out what's going on. So this is the Google Physics News page. I see some interesting things here. Some granular columns weigh too much. That sounds like a gravity thing. Wonder what that's about. Is it possible that the geometric arrangement of an item affects its weight? Not supposed to. Let's see what they say here. Let's see here. Some of the grain's weight can be measured as less than the grain's true weight. Now, so they're saying that the walls of the container support some of the weight, so that if you measure it at the bottom, it doesn't reflect the true weight. But if you measure the entire cylinder, that should still reflect the entire weight, I would think. The apparent weight increased more slowly than the true weight. I'm still kind of curious, is like, are they weighing the container itself? Because if they did, then that shouldn't be showing any difference in weight. I would imagine if you're pouring stuff into a cylinder that you would have to be measuring the weight of the cylinder. The effect is totally unexpected. Well, that's one thing going on there. But that may not be exactly what I was thinking it might be. Let's see here. Physics in the pandemic. Scientists find a way to extract color from black. Doesn't black contain all the colors? Researchers catch light in a funnel. See what that's about. So, Bill, have you ever heard of anything like that where the weight depends upon the shape of an object or anything like that? To a certain extent, I would think maybe it does, because it exposes different parts of the object to different gravitational fields. So I would think it would have to, but I haven't really heard anything about that. So they're trying to capture light through a light funnel. So what's the big deal about this? Managed to realize we call a light funnel to affect light in an optical fiber 10 kilometers in length can be accumulated at one specific point of choice in the wire. Due to a skin effect, so they're trying to concentrate light into a fiber. But an optical fiber is already pretty small. Can be accumulated at one specific point in the wire. So you can take all the light in an optical fiber and have it accumulate in one specific spot. Well, that would be interesting if they could do that. I don't know. That seems terribly likely to me. Physics of spread to predict 100% market recovery from the coronavirus. Well, that would be good. So the mathematics of physics says we're going to recover from this 100%. Until the coronavirus spread stops, accelerating markets are not going to recover, at least not in any sustainable way. Or are they saying the uptick is the recent uptick that we got from them passing the recovery bill is not going to last very long? I'm talking nothing about acceleration of spread. Acceleration is the rate of change itself. So here's a rule for market recovery. If acceleration is positive, markets will not recover. No other metric will matter. Corollary to that is the rule: when acceleration seems to be consistently negative, markets will seem to bounce back suddenly fast, maybe as fast as they dropped. Forecast for negative acceleration. So they're forecasting till March 26th. Well, gee, that would be today. So they're already thinking of what they're currently doing here. The number needs to go negative. Well, at least in China, certainly their rate has gone negative.
Are we all waiting because we think Franklin is looking something up and maybe Franklin had to go attend to something? So we're all just sitting here thinking we're waiting for something that ain't coming?
Well, I can make a few comments while we're waiting for Franklin.
Yeah, I think we thought he was looking something up.
Yeah.
I
The
think maybe had to go suddenly.
the point I want to make is that regular radiation therapy like X-rays or particles like negative pions, negative muons, negative kaons. These particles, uh, what they do is they kill cells when that radiation occurs. But when you use longitudinal radiation, the life energy of the cells is increased. They're not killed, but it enables them to kill specific kinds of cells that are associated with a disease or cancer or something like that. And so that's the difference. Uh, if you do radiation therapy for cancer, you kill all the cells in that area that you're concentrating the radiation, good and bad cells.
I think the difference is radiation there isn't frequency specific. It's like pink noise. It's a frequency scatter blast, like a shotgun frequency discord, and that's why it's not quite the same as what we were talking about. You're talking about longitudinal waves of a specific frequency, and that is not what radiation therapy is. Radiation therapy is a band of frequencies, not a specific one. What I was talking about is virus cell shattering using resonant frequencies. And I don't think that's the same as the longitudinal waves you're talking about. But it's similar, perhaps, related, perhaps, but not the same as. I'm talking about killing the virus by melting it, basically,
Uh-huh.
by breaking the little stalks off of it,
Yeah.
by shaking the sphere at a frequency that causes those little stalks to resonate at half of their wavelength, distance from the connection to the external part, because they're on the exterior of a sphere. So they have their radius at the outside of them, and they have a radius at the inside of them, and they're filling an expanding sphere as they go outward. So if you hit half the frequency of the stalk added to the frequency of the overall object, you're going to have this stalk melting interference pattern specifically tuned to just a very specific frequency that will only shatter those cells and do nothing else to anything else, because nothing else is going to be affected by that very specific frequency. And that's what that article that I put up today, IP, is talking about, is using the dipolar resonant frequency specific to a specific virus to shatter it. So you might be able to irradiate a person with just one frequency, which means you're not going to like boil them to death. And that one frequency permeate their body, vibrate their body, and shatter the virus cells. So you walk in, you get irradiated, you walk out, and the virus is gone. Perhaps. That's what's being looked at. And I thought that's what you were talking about, Bill, when you talked about the work of Anton Priore.
Yeah.
I thought that's maybe what he was doing, was using a very specific frequency of specific illness to shatter that illness.
What he was doing was providing energy to the cells that were enforcing the immune system. And that energy gives them more capability to attack the cells for the disease or whatever you have. Could be cancer, could be other types of diseases.
All right, here's the thought. We know now that UV light can be used to create an antibacterial environment. If you have a UV light in a room, it's going to kill bacteria in the room. We know that.
Yeah.
So let's say he had an antibacterial lamp, and he had people who were potentially going to get ill, and he bathes them in UV light. Their environment becomes sterile, and that helps their body recover from the illness or prevent the illness. Perhaps. I'm just saying, perhaps. We're talking about some dude from 400 years ago, right? So the stories over time have to allow for them to have gotten mutated a little. And so when we're trying to figure out what went on in the past, what got suppressed or not suppressed or whatever, unless I'm talking about the wrong Anton Priori, because he was from like 1600s.
No, Prairie is very recent.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I didn't find the right guy. I looked at Anton Prior radiation, and it was talking about 1676.
His name, by the way, is spelled Priore, and then Anton is Antoine. Yeah.
I left the E off again.
Yeah.
So I found the wrong guy. Sorry, I thought we were talking about some like ancient history guy.
No, he's fairly recent. I think he died in the 70s.
Electromagnetic device that can make your cancer. But don't you think there'd be people lining up just to give it a shot if there's any chance it was going to work?
Pardon?
Don't you think there'd be people lining up to give it a shot just if they thought there was a chance it would work?
There were thousands a week giving it a shot after he cured the wife of the president of France.
If it got suppressed after curing the wife of the president of France, but radiation therapy hasn't gotten suppressed. Why not? Why has radiation therapy been allowed to become a thing if the electromagnetic therapy device wasn't?
We're having a hard time hearing you. Can you turn one of your microphones off or something?
Does this help?
Well, go ahead and talk a little bit. I'll tell you.
And I might be talking too loud, perhaps.
No, it's not too loud. It's fluctuating.
Okay, I'll try and keep a level tone.
Oh, that's good. It's very good now.
So oh gosh, I lost my train of thought a little.
We're talking about radiation. Radiation is a commonly accepted mainstream way of treating cancer now.
So what I'm saying is the acceptance of radiation therapy shows that the medicine industry is open to the inclusion of physical treatments. So why would radiation therapy have allowed to become a thing if Anton Priori's efforts weren't allowed? Why did they get suppressed but radiation therapy didn't? Or UV light treatment of antibacterial didn't? Or,
Well, regular radiation therapy for cancer is a mixed bag. It has side effects, and they're dangerous, and you can die from them. And I was involved in a type of radiation therapy when I was on my postdoc at Catholic University. What I did is I got a grant to treat 1,000 inoperable brain tumors in patients, in 1,000 patients. And I used a negative beam, a beam of negative pions. And what happens is the pions are brought in at low energy, so they just go through the skull and the skin and into the brain and stop where the tumor is. And the pion replaces an electron in an atom and then cascades down to the lowest energy state, which, because the pion is so much heavier than the electron, 70 times heavier, it causes the pion to go inside the nucleus. And when it goes inside the nucleus, there's a nuclear reaction, and that nuclear reaction causes the nucleus to split. Now, it doesn't make a nuclear explosion because it's only one exploding at a time. And when it splits, it takes that atom and makes it two atoms. But now that messes up the molecule, and it kills the molecule. And so what I did was I put these beams into patients' heads. We moved the beam around so it was destroying the molecules that were inside the tumor. Now, the tumor, unfortunately, is not a nice, clean, geometrical thing. It looks like plant roots. If you look at the roots of a plant under the soil, the roots are heaviest near the center where the plant comes out, but then they go out and get thinner and thinner as they go out. And so when we were treating the patient, we only did the part that was largest, because the other part we would kill good cells, trying to get just a few bad cells. So anyways, that's what we did, and so we killed the cells because we changed the atoms that were in the molecules, and it just messed everything up in the molecules, and that worked pretty well. We didn't do any other type of work on them and on the patient. And out of the 1,000 patients that had inoperable brain tumors, which means it was impossible to surgically remove the tumor without killing the patient or making them so they're just a mess and they couldn't do anything. And so anyway, we were successful in treating 990 of the 1,000 inoperable brain tumor patients with negative pions. The only problem was we did this at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, and we had to use the power supply plants of 2 or 3 states to get enough power to run all the accelerators simultaneously so we could do this therapy. But it worked, and it's the most successful radiation therapy we've ever found for cancer. But it's the most expensive too, and so we don't use it very much. But we did find out by doing 1,000 patients that it would work, and we've tried to substitute other elementary particles for the pion, but none of the others work nearly as well as the negative pion. The kaons don't work, the muons don't work, and that sort of thing. So we've tried all.
We have anti-proton treatments, right, for prostate cancer?
Anti-proton was one of the ones we did, but anti-protons are hard to make a beam of. They get any volume or of the beam, because you've got to do a lot of work to get it. It takes a lot more energy than doing a pion. A pion is lighter than a proton. So the heavier the.
You might have figured out something. I'm kind of curious if I do,
Yeah, I'm sure they've probably tried it, but the cost is even higher than for the negative pion. So I think that cost factor is going to ruin things the most. And also, when the negative antiproton goes into the nucleus, you may have more dangerous reactions occurring. And
maybe it's proton treatment.
Regular proton won't work in terms of you have to use it as a beam to break apart the nucleus by hitting it, and so you have to have a much higher energy, which means you're killing all kinds of cells around the if you were doing an inoperable brain tumor, you're killing cells all throughout the whole brain, not just the area that you want to kill the tumor.
I think what we're talking about here is actually proton therapy. That's, at least I just did a little quick Google here.
No, pion therapies. I did the pion therapy. That's my
you did pion, but apparently there is this thing called proton therapy.
Yeah.
That they are doing, right? I guess protons are very easy to make. Those are just
protons,
hydrogen,
they can't be used like I used the negative pion, They can't go in and break up an atom without causing a lot of energy to be released. The negative pion can't, and so the negative pion has a much more usefulness in terms of medical purposes. We've tried all kinds of particles. We've tried a lot of time they use X-rays, and X-rays kills every cell that it hits, and so good ones and bad ones. When the work that I was doing did also killed cells, good ones and bad ones, but you could pinpoint where it was. Whereas with the X-ray therapy, you can't pinpoint it so well. So
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to the wife of the French Prime Minister, it could have been she got well, irrespective of this longitudinal wave therapy. So the question is there any controlled study of this? A controlled clinical test to show that it actually is the wave therapy that is the critical treatment factor.
Yes, the head of all these medical societies were involved in that. They were using very stringent tests on her. When it appeared that she was getting well, they were shocked, and they did more tests. They couldn't believe it at first.
Well, that with all due respect, Bill, that's not a controlled clinical trial where you have a sample of perhaps 50 or 100 or even 1,000 people.
No, they didn't do that. They didn't do that.
Where the treatment is randomized and you have a control group that's not receiving the treatment, but otherwise is experiencing the same care as the subgroup that's receiving the treatment, so that you can then determine that these people in the previous anecdotal work, we have to call that anecdotal. That's not a controlled clinical trial by any means, no matter how many specialists in France were following the condition of this lady. It could have been she was getting well on her own without any respect to this particular longitudinal wave treatment, if that's what it's called.
Well, she was expected to be within 1 or 2 weeks of death when they did this therapy.
But again, that's not a clinical trial. That's just an anecdotal description of one individual.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
And it's not a clinical trial. It's not using what we call the experimental method, where you have an experimental and a control group, and everything is similar as much as possible between the experimental and the control group, except for the treatment, which is supposed to have a positive effect.
Right.
And only that's called a controlled clinical trial.
Right.
And that's my only question. So there is none on this.
Well,
so this is purely
the only thing is that the success rate is almost 100% with this type of technique when they were using it on animals, which they did thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of animals, and they found that it was working almost 100% of the time. You realize
and they had a control group for the animals that were not receiving the treatment, but otherwise in exactly the same situation.
Yes, because no other known treatment could get them well like this was. No other treatment that the medical profession had, that would work on these animals that way. And so,
okay, well, just not to be too technical,
right?
But a controlled clinical test is not comparing one treatment with another. It's comparing treatment versus no treatment, all else being the same.
Yeah, right.
And that's what a clinical trial or what we call an experiment is.
When you go to a veterinarian, they don't do that kind of trials. They just treat you.
Understood. We have the same thing with the chloroquine story, that there's a lot of evidence and experience of clinicians that it does have a favorable effect, but that's not exactly a controlled clinical trial. I'm not implying that you must have that before you actually use it to your benefit, because doctors now are using the chloroquine on patients with success apparent. But I'm just pointing out that this French lady could have gotten well all by herself. Okay.
Yeah, but none of the doctors believe that she was going to, from their experience. But yet, you're right; it wasn't done that way. And but you see, we do more of that in our country than they actually do in Europe, because they don't have the Food and Drug Administration in their governments. So it's a little bit different there.
Right. So I'm not throwing water or what do they say, a cold blanket over what you're saying. I'm just pointing out that we lack this sort of experimental evidence at this point in time, no matter how propitious the other observations and may be.
Yeah, but
it's a technical point I'm making.
Yeah, I don't know to what extent they may have tried to do that after she was cured. She was the first human, that they tried it on, and it could be that when he received the grant, that they were doing controlled cases, but I know they were not set up quite that way. But
well, your description before of the spoiling fruit is very, very close to actually an experimental design, where you have the fruit in a crate or whatever container it was. Some of the fruit was closer to the radar. Some of it was stored further away. There was less damage to the fruit of aging, or whatever you call it, a ripening of the fruit, if it was near the radar. So that's very close to an experimental design, actually.
Yeah, but they didn't. That wasn't quite the. They were very crude in their design of that experiment. If you think of it that way, it's not as good as what a medical study, particularly if you're using pharmaceuticals and you want to know, does this pharmaceutical work better than that one, and does it work better than if you don't do anything? And so that is how that can work. And yeah, I agree with you that they didn't do all of that, but that wasn't their goal. At their goal at the time.
I'm just making a technical point,
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I suspect that they didn't get that done. Now, they may have started doing that when he received the grant from the French government. I don't know all the details.
Excuse me to jump in, Bill. I'm sorry about that. But what might be the best evidence for the effectivity of the treatment? The fact that the U.S. government is trying to prevent its being used.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be. You're right. Somebody
that might be the best evidence of all.
Yeah.
If the government is afraid of it, it must be good.
Yeah, well, not the government so much, but if the people running the Food and Drug Administration. See, the Food and Drug Administration is not paid for by the government. It's paid for by these registration fees of $4 million per therapy. And so you have to register a lot, and you have to be able to make a lot of money on whatever you're registering. And you somehow have to have unique control over it, like a patent, or you won't make it $4 million to get money back. So the problem with natural therapies is you can't control it. You can't get a complete control over it. And so what people try to do is they find a natural therapy that works. Then they say, let's see if we can make this in our pharmaceutical laboratory and make it so we can patent it. And then we can use it. And that's what they do. But what they find is that the natural substances than the real substance. But the natural substances often are expensive to purify and to harvest and all that kind of stuff. And so they prefer to make it in a pharmaceutical laboratory. But there's something different about what they end up making. It isn't chemically exactly the same thing. It has the same ratio of various atoms in the molecule, but it's if you look at the symmetry, what I have found is that the natural products have what's called chiral symmetry in the molecules, and when you make it in a pharmaceutical laboratory, you get a combination of symmetries, and that combination, the non-chiral part of the non-chiral part of the symmetry, is bad for your health. And so, to take that out after you make it is very, very expensive, and they just don't do it. That's why a lot of the things that they make, they say, we've got the active ingredient in this natural substance, which is quite expensive, and you can get it cheaper from us, but we still charge a lot of money for it.
One thing, if I may jump in here again, I never thought I'd mention my daughter here, but actually, she pointed out that some of the what you called active ingredients, maybe in fruits and plants and things like that, the so-called natural environment that, the natural diet that we've talked about here in this session, require additional compounds in the plants so that there's a mixture of effects, that any possible negative effects of what we're calling the active ingredient are actually opposed by other compounds within the plant. So in other words, she's saying simply extracting what we call the active ingredient is not really good enough. You just have to go to the original plant mix.
Yeah. That's certainly a factor there. And I'm familiar with what are called healing oils, natural oils that you get oil out of certain plants. And there's more than just one ingredient in that oil. And we try to find, the pharmaceutical industry will try to find what is the most active ingredient and make that. But there's other things in there too, and you can't separate them out the way that when they process it to make these oils, they are combining it with other things. And
my daughter hasn't commercialized her work, but she also is making natural oils.
Yeah, and so the reputation of the natural oils in the days of the Israelites and the Hebrews and the priests who were the doctors was that in their day there was no disease they couldn't cure. But and they were using these natural oils for doing all of their cures. But today we have more diseases, I think, that we come across, and some of them we don't know necessarily in oil. Some oils will work in general, are helpful for a number of different maladies, but so it's more complicated. But it looks like the natural plant and the oils in the plant were quite helpful. And in my wife's case, she had cancer, and she just ate the natural fruits and vegetables without cooking or processing. So she was getting all of the molecules that were in that plant, and
exactly,
and that seemed to work. And so, but we didn't do the Amish weren't doing controlled studies, but they were using it in their community, and they were having a lot of success, even though they didn't try doing these controlled tests where you have people that don't get it and people that do. But people felt like my wife that it worked, and she wasn't complaining. And the regular medical profession didn't have a therapy that was working as far as we were concerned. And I was working for the Smithsonian Science Information Exchange, and we maintained the database website for the National Cancer Institute. So we had direct access to how good all the therapies were for various types of cancer. And none of the registered therapies that the Food and Drug Administration had doctors use were very successful in treating cancer, the kind my wife had. So we were very pleased that the one that we tried with the natural substances worked. But you know, no one gave us proof that it was going to work. We just had word of mouth.
I was going to raise, with regard to the interpretation of these matters, where you don't have controlled experiments. I mean, you know, say in certain cases that these things work, you know, but I mean, the same thing could be said of, say, miracle cures or something like that. Going to Lourdes, occasionally you get a sort of a cure for what the medics say is an incurable disease, and they can't explain how it came to pass. Now, you know, we know that there's a sequence that sort of B comes after A. But whether A caused B is another question. I mean, there could be a myriad of causes. The most obvious is psychosomatic. I mean, if perhaps even the French president's wife might have really believed that this treatment was efficacious, and that could have you know, triggered her system to cure herself, and that might be an explanation for a lot of these miracle cures. And also, so we have to be very, very cautious when we're interpreting something which indeed is efficacious, interpreting it as being caused by this alone.
Well, one thing that we haven't talked about too much is we have this meter, the experimental life energy meter, and with that we can correlate the life energy readings with cures, and that's very interesting. They officially they don't recognize this experimental life energy meter, although it is used in hospitals in the emergency room, and some hospitals have, what they have done is they have said, well, we want to do some studies on this. So what they do is on the food, that is, what they have done is they have split their food supply services so that they have two. One has the highest energy, life energy fruits and vegetables and foods, and the other one has the lower energy. And then they let the patient choose which one they want, and then they keep track on, well, this patient had this problem and this patient had that problem, the same problem, you know, and one chose the food with the higher life energy, one chose the food with the lower life energy. Could we see any difference in their time when they were in the hospital? And their statistics show, yeah, we can see a difference. They do better if they have the food with the higher life energy. But so they're doing some studies like that in terms of the type of food you eat. But in terms of therapies with these life energy, longitudinal radiation and that sort of thing, I don't know how much of that has been done. It may have been done by some medical schools, but some medical schools do test this kind of thing. But just because it works doesn't get it into the American medical system, because there's this financial way that the Food and Drug Administration is supported, and it's costly, and no one can make the money to pay it unless they have some way of charging extra for it. And they haven't done that. The medical practices that have used these techniques don't charge huge amounts of money, so that they can get their money back if they register the protocol in the proper manner.
Well, I wanted to comment that in certain cases where the expected outcome is pretty obvious, like if you're on COVID-19 and you're on a ventilator, that you know, statistically we know that, you know, half of those people are going to die, right?
Right.
So we have very good statistics on that. So that can actually serve as your control case. So, you know, rather than trying to do because it would actually be not morally appropriate to say that you guys get treatment and you guys don't when there's plenty of people who don't get the treatment, right, that you can compare against. So yeah, I think they should be doing some trials where, I think all they need to do is keep track of, what is the state of the patient and what is the expected outcome. And then when they give them this experimental treatment, do they do better than the expectation? So, because a lot of these cases, yeah, you need to test the drug for efficacy, because like if you're testing like some cream to see whether it treats some skin condition or something like that, it's not terribly obvious which cases would have resolved themselves and which ones would not, and it's kind of subtle, the action of the drug. But when the outcome is death, then I think that's not anything that the patient could fake, because we can't underestimate the placebo effect, because typically in these randomized trials, it's like up to 30% of the people who are on the placebo do get the effect, right? And even though they're not taking the real drug. And why is that? Because the placebo is a very powerful thing in people's minds. So, for example, it could be that vitamin C is so effective because it's America's favorite placebo, right? Yeah.
Well, I've read about the vitamin C, and it's interesting. The form you get the vitamin C in is very important, because some forms, when you take it, like as an additive to your food additive, it doesn't get through the stomach into where it needs to go. But others, they protect the vitamin C to get through the stomach and the intestine, so they can finally get it into the blood where they want it. And so anyway, it's a mixed bag, and when you go to the store to buy vitamin C, you don't know which form you're getting, and but usually the form that can make it better into your blood to help with this virus, that form is not the average form that you get that is destroying the vitamin C while it's in the intestine, because it's not protected fully. But the vitamin C still does some things for you, but it doesn't do all the things that you want to do as far as the virus is concerned.
So maybe I bought the most expensive version of vitamin C. Maybe that was better.
Maybe. Well,
I'm thinking
we'll see.
that.
We'll see if you get the virus. We'll see. But yeah, vitamin C is supposed to be helpful if you can get it to the place. See, when they do the studies, a lot of times in the laboratory, they are taking the virus cells and they're looking at them under the microscope, and then they add some vitamin C or something like that to it to see what the effect is going to be. And they say, oh, vitamin C can really do a good job on this. But that's assuming you can get it through the digestive system up to where these cells are, and virus cells. So that's the part they don't mention quite as much, but some tests.
What form do you recommend, Bill? What form do you recommend?
I got some email on the form of vitamin C, but I don't have access at the moment. I may have deleted it. But anyway, I get an awful lot of health newsletters and things of that sort, and they cover these kinds of topics. And I don't know if they're valid. They're just claiming, buy our form of vitamin C, it'll get through your intestines and get to kill the virus. But I don't know how that was tested, but that's what they're claiming.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the too many kinds of vitamin C's. Usually you get the generic bottle with, 1,000 milligram tablets, a pretty big white tablet.
Yeah.
The only major difference, I say, you can get like rose hips vitamin C. I don't know what the difference is in that, though I haven't really seen any other kind that is readily available.
Uh-huh.
Sarah says that, in China, in Shanghai, they were treating with vitamin C, and apparently that they saw a improvement there. And I would think that we should be paying attention to what's going on in China.
Yeah.
And
Well-
and if they've come up with anything that can act as a treatment, because right now we really don't have any actual treatment. I was watching a doctor, and he was explaining what goes on, and by the time you need to be on a ventilator, you're almost, you're just almost too late to do anything.
Yeah. Now Musser is pointing out that the 50 grams of C given into your veins is more effective than eating it and letting it go through your intestines, because
if you drink it right into your vein, it's not going to get destroyed or absorbed or modified by your digestive tract.
That's right. So that may be more effective than than taking a tablet or something like we do when you take a dietary supplement with vitamin C in it. And,
50 grams directly intravenously could be, I don't know, like 10,000 grams or something.
Yeah, a whole lot more. Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to point out that we haven't talked about, but the place in China where this virus appears to have developed is a place where the Chinese government and the military works on chemical warfare and biological warfare. And they've never said anything about this, but is it just a fluke that it happens to be in the same city where they do this kind of research? Or did they cause this to become created? They were trying to make new weapons of this sort? I don't know. But it's kind of circumstantially the fact that it's in the same town or city that they do this work in for the military makes it look peculiar. And there may be some effort to have an impact on the rest of the world by releasing this to the world, but in order to protect themselves so people won't criticize them too much, they let some of the Chinese people get it too. But anyway, we'll have to see what the impact is in China compared to the other countries for the long term, and see if there's any basis for that. But I don't know if there is.
Well,
Well,
this is all possible, but I also read that the Chinese propensity to consume animal products of various forms could have exacerbated this. And in fact, I thought it's generally accepted that maybe the consumption of a bat or something like that might be the origin of it. Bat meat in China.
Yeah, that's what I think the Chinese are putting out. but circumstantially, it's in the city where they do their work for biological and chemical warfare development, and so I don't know. It seems like that's kind of circumstantial evidence that maybe something else is going on there too, and they just don't want to admit it.
May I
Yeah,
comment?
that's certainly one of the internet. I mean, certainly if you go on the internet, you'll find conspiracy theories like that this is a biological weapon. And this thing is very related to like SARS. So, maybe they're working on a SARS like virus, and maybe it got loose in Wuhan. That is one of the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Not terribly far out of real. I mean, all it has to do is, that virus just has to walk outside the laboratory, and then everyone will get it, right?
Yeah.
I heard a
I
conspiracy. I heard a conspiracy theory. They say that there was a bat with a tick who apparently picked up the disease at this laboratory, and then some guy at the laboratory, when he realized that what had happened, quarantined himself, but it was too late. I've seen that on the internet. I can't say if it's true or not, but that's what I've heard.
Well, didn't the doctor that first reported this work in that lab?
Yes, I think so. I think
so.
that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, may I comment on the bat thing?
Here, go ahead.
When we consider whether it did or did not come from the consumption of a bat, I have zero understanding why that raises anybody's eyebrows. Don't we all have a local sushi restaurant where we eat raw fish of various kinds, including raw fish eggs? Don't don't we have oyster bars where we go to shuck raw oysters and slither them down our throat with a squirt of hot sauce and lemon juice? And yet the eating of a bat versus the eating of a raw oyster raises an eyebrow. I don't understand that, not one little bit.
Well, I think I've watched some videos on this, and the thing is that the original coronavirus actually lives inside of bats.
An
So
unfortunate coincidence. If it lived in a piece of sushi, so what? If it lived in a raw oyster, so what? That's that. Who cares that it lived in a bat? Like, yes, observe that, learn that, know that, use that information, but judge anybody based on it, that just makes no sense to me. And conspiracy? What conspiracy to eat raw oysters? Would that be a conspiracy if that's where it came from? Raw oyster, not raw bat. So how is there any conspiracy to? I don't understand any of that. I don't understand how people are thinking those things.
Well,
the part or the
they
bat?
think that it was because they were working on this that they weren't taking careful enough precautions. Maybe they didn't want to set off a pandemic, but they did anyway, whether they wanted to or not.
Right. And so a pandemic always has to come from somewhere. What if it came from one of our fish markets? What if it came, like, I just don't understand why people are in any way, shape, or form pointing all these fingers when it's just a circumstance. Shit happens.
Well, I think David had a comment earlier about perhaps the benefits of a plant-based diet or less risks of a plant-based diet. And I think we know scientifically that animal-based food is more likely to go off under bad circumstances. For example, the laws of kashrus, which the Jewish people would have, probably originated from their sojourns in the desert, and the sort of foods which go off very easily would be things like pig meat and shellfish and things like that. They are known to go off, maybe being exposed to high temperatures for a long period of time or not cooled sufficiently. So that would explain that some of the foods that you've just mentioned, Alistair, there would be suspect as well. That they would be perhaps likely to go off and maybe lead to certain viruses which could be transmitted by eating the foods.
It's just I was just like I just get confused by the perception of the need for squeamishness from one type of food to another type of food when people don't seem to even notice that they eat some foods that are equally squeam deserving.
Like what?
Well, like raw oysters, that deserves as much squeamishness as monkey brains or ox tongue and ox tail and, well, all kinds of things, basically anything when you really think about it. So what makes bats any different from all of the above? Nothing makes them.
No, nothing. It's just that they think that from the coronavirus is RNA, that it originated from something that was in bats. And then we've had like the swine flu, and that's based on pigs. And then we've got the bird flu, you know, that's based on like, you know, birds or chickens or things like that. So certainly even, you know,
and we didn't judge all bacon eaters because of the swine flu. We didn't go, oh no, they're those judge-worthy bacon eaters that caused the swine flu pandemic. No, we don't say that. So why? Who cares about it being bats and people eating bats? Who cares?
because they're delicious.
Other than the information that it provides, but all the other way people seem to be wanting to perceive it, I don't understand them. Not when you consider raw oysters, raw eggs, raw, all the crap we eat raw, and all the different crap we eat. Before anybody wants to say, oh, the Chinese and their bad eating, then first take a real good look at what you shove in your mouth. That's all I'm saying. Like, and then try and be objective.
It is true that there is a propensity to wish to find a scapegoat, and I think I've mentioned on previous occasions that can be quite dangerous. Actually, society can get quite ugly when it finds a perceived scapegoat. But I still think that it does behove us to look at the diet, including things that we're used to. I mean, that's what you're saying, Alistair, that we're used to certain things and we don't cast a blink at it, whereas things that we're not used to, we say, oh, that's awful. I think we should look at all those things in an objective way, as you say.
I can go to downtown Toronto and watch them chopping the heads off the chickens if I want to.
Yeah, bird flu, right?
Chicken versus the bat. I don't give to. So one of the things I have heard is that because these are dabbling in unapproved meat, then they go underground and they have wet markets, which are considerably less clean and sanitary than regulated market, and they would like to fix that situation. That's sensible. That's okay. You hear the information, you make some use of it, and you act on it in a reasonable manner without like this whole like, oh, I don't get all the other ways that it gets thought of. That's all. I mean, I didn't mean to kind of have an emotional tone in my voice there or a rant or nothing, but it's just, you know, to be objective and scientific and productive, to look at the situation with from an external perspective, not from inside of yourself, but from outside of everybody. And so, okay, maybe these wet markets are a bad thing and they need to be regulated. Maybe we've had similar situations where we've had, you know, meat markets that weren't as clean as they should have been, and over time that's something that we've gotten better and better at. But nobody's perfect, and so somewhere something went on, a mistake got made, a virus got out, shit happens. Let's do our best to prevent it in the future and move on. That's how I see it. And I don't see any old blame the Chinese this or that. I don't get all of that. But certainly it's not something they wanted to have happen more than anybody else.
Yep, that may be the case. But looks like we are towards the end of our 2 hours here. So I want to just summarize a little bit of what we talked about. I guess I did start off the conversation by asking Dr. Lucas of any miracle cures that we might avail ourselves to for the coronavirus. I'm not sure that any of these have been shown to be effective against the coronavirus, but you know, he pointed out we have UV longitudinal radiation or even longitudinal current. And Dennis brought up some companies that actually sell these sorts of things. And we did bring up, what the whole idea of like what a clinical trial is good for, how does that work, and how might that work like in the COVID virus or in say, cases of cancer, and also what kind of medical treatments are available for cancer. So apparently, we do have radiation, but that kind of radiation can be damaging to healthy cells as well as to bad cells, and that it seems that if your cure is too good to the point where we don't need the pharmacies anymore, then it seems like those kinds of cures are suppressed, I suppose. At least that's what seems to happen. And also the ridiculous things like the FDA banning the use of fruits and vegetables to cure anything. So you think that's, by common sense, would not be something you would have to say. So that would be the summary of what we had been talking about here. And thanks for all participants, and hopefully we'll see you back here next week.
Bye.
Thank you.